Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 18 of 3D Universe Untethered. I'm Jeremy Simon, your host. And in this session, we're going to be talking all about MakerBot 3D printing solutions for education. So what you can do with MakerBot in the classroom. And it's quite a bit, especially if you haven't kept up with them in recent years. So it's going to be a great discussion. And to have that discussion, I'd like to invite Dottie Stewart to join me. And I'm going to introduce her momentarily here for you. Hi, Dottie.
Hey,
Welcome.
Jeremy, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. How about you?
Fabulous.
Excellent.
Ready
Good
to
to have
talk
you.
about printing.
Absolutely. I always love talking about 3D printing in education, especially. That's always been one of my favorite areas, and making sure kids get access to this great technology. So we have a lot to talk about today, but let's maybe first give our audience a little bit of a better sense of who you are. I'm going to just read a little bio here, if you don't mind, embarrass you for a few moments here. So as Vice President of Global Channel at MakerBot, Dottie Stewart oversees the company's go-to-market channel strategies across the regions. She has over 20 years of experience in technology, sales, and education, building channel strategies and creating connections between manufacturers, resellers, and customers. Dottie was also a teacher for over 10 years, receiving awards for exemplary teaching and technology integration in the classroom. She loves her morning coffee, anything that goes fast, roller coasters, race cars, planes, and traveling to new places. In her downtime, loves being at home with the family, relaxing, watching movies, or tinkering with tech. Great to have you, Dottie. Awesome.
Great to be here. And I think most importantly, yes, I do all of those other things, but having that teaching background has kind of grounded me throughout everything I've done. So I think that's kind of what we bring to the table today is that background in education.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we do have a lot of ground to cover today. And so one of the things that we're going to do a little bit differently here is, we usually keep it mostly just discussion oriented and it's just kind of us talking, but I do think some slides would be helpful to just kind of keep us on track with the discussion today so that we don't miss any of the important topics. We will be cognizant of the fact that some of our listeners are getting the podcast version of this. So we'll keep you, updated on what we're discussing as we go. We won't rely too heavily on the visuals, but for those watching, it will help to kind of keep us all on the same page and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to remind our watchers and listeners that you can always get to us through our blog at 3duniverse.org. You'll see a graphic in the upper left for 3D Universe Untethered, and that's where you'll always find the latest recordings, list of upcoming episodes, etc. All right, so here we go. So, all right, so here's some of the topics that we're going to cover today. We thought it might be good to start with just kind of talking about why 3D printing in the classroom. And I think most of our listeners and watchers get this, but it's always good to review and kind of talk about some of the cool things being done in the classroom and why that's important. We're going to talk about some of the educational stuff that's available, the certification resources that are available to teachers and students. We'll talk about CloudPrint and why that's helpful in a classroom environment. This new sketch bundle for the classroom, which you may or may not be familiar with, and why that's good for educational environments. And then we're going to talk about sort of, okay, once you get a 3D printer or a 3D printing solution in the classroom, then what? Where do we go? How do you get started? What are some of the kinds of projects you can do, the lesson plans? And we'll talk through some examples and give you some ideas to help you get started. That sound about right, Dottie?
Sounds great. I'm looking forward
Awesome.
to talking about all of these things.
So I'm going to let you kind of take the lead on this from here, Dottie, and you kind of just give me a nudge when you want me to forward slides if I don't get the...
Yeah, absolutely. As we start to really talk about 3D printing in the classroom and why 3D printing in the classroom, and when we really think about that, when I started back in the early 2000s, because yes, you mentioned number of years, so it's been a few years since I've been in education. But there was 3D printing out there, but it was still that pipe dream, right? Like it was something that was almost intangible and untouchable. It was something that wasn't being used every day. However, when you look at 3D printing now, I still think a lot of educators still think that it's like this kind of remote thing that kids may or may not use. But when you look at 3D printing, it is really changing new product development across every single industry you can imagine. Automotive, aerospace, maritime, medical, sports, railway, everything. Because the prototyping, the jigs, the fixtures, the manufacturing, the fact that it can go from small to large, it's just huge. And I think my passion is that, educators really understand that when they start having kids understand 3D modeling, understanding what is happening in the background, get them started early. It's almost like learning a foreign language. But their jobs in the future are going to entail something around this,
That's
whether
right.
it's the modeling, whether it's the printing, but understanding 3D printing is being used across all of these areas. And I'm sure you can talk to this as well. Um,
Well, I'll just point out, not because I know it would be getting off topic. I want to stick with the education focus, but I will say that I hear again and again and again from our customers across all of the industries that you're showing here and more, when you talk about that prototyping and having an idea and bringing that idea to life. I hear the same kind of story again and again, where we used to have to send it out to have a part created, and it would take several weeks and hundreds of dollars to get that part back. Now we can 3D print it in a matter of hours, and it costs us a few bucks. And the big thing is, it's not just the fact that it's getting done so much faster and so much cheaper, but when you think about that creative process of having an idea, and there's like an energy that goes with that. You have this idea, and you're excited about it, and when you can prototype rapidly and literally iterate within a day, that really helps to keep that momentum going. And I think businesses are realizing that there's a lot of power in that you can do things in ways that you just couldn't do when you were doing this traditional sort of outsourcing cycle for prototyping and stuff. So I agree. We're seeing it in every industry, because they're realizing there's just no question there's an advantage with it.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later too, as we kind of start to talk about kind of how to implement this in the classroom as well.
Awesome.
So when you think about that, again, just kind of iterating that the different career paths that can your kids can go into, right? Because again, we are talking about education, but why do we start it with the careers? Because again, teachers, I know from being a teacher, there is limited time, and okay, I've got to teach math, and I've got to teach science, and I've got to teach language arts, and I've got to get the kids reading, and how do I have time for this? The reality is this iterative thinking that they're going through, the design thinking process, that's going to lead them into all of these careers, and all of these careers are utilizing 3D printing. And I just, again, I love to put these up there so people start to think about what their kids are going to be doing, whether they're a high school kid and they're going to be printing in a few years, or whether they're 5 years old. And yes, we have 5-year-olds that are designing 3D prints. Product design, engineering, architecture, and the entertainment industry. A lot of people don't even know that a lot of the animations and things like that, they're using 3D printing to create those things.
Hmm.
The manufacturing process, that's what you were just talking about. Medical. I mean, any of the listeners out there, go look at 3D printing in medical and what they can do.
Oh
It's
yeah.
amazing. Um,
Absolutely. And it's
you
not
know,
just, we're not just talking about things being printed and then, putting them in the body. We're talking about assistive technologies, tools to assist with surgeries, all kinds of things, for
yes,
planning surgeries. Lots of
yeah.
and there's another interesting aspect to this, which is, yes, eventually all of these students are going to end up in some kind of a career, but before you get to a career, you got to find your way there. You got to get some experience in the business world. For some of these kids, it might be something like starting their own little small business, setting up an Etsy shop. They could make things with various types of digital fabrication, like 3D printing, and they could actually start their own little business. I mean, there's all kinds of other possibilities like that this opens up.
Absolutely. So again, to me, I think it's great to think about the education space, but I think if we think about education in a bubble without understanding what is that career path
Right.
that we're asking teachers to invest in, and what's the return on investment for our teachers, right? As business owners, we're always talking about return on investment. And teachers and schools are looking for the same thing. They want to provide their students with the best tools that are going to prepare them for their future.
Of
And I
course.
think really integrating 3D printing and the 3D printing process into your curriculum is going to help your students find that success.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on here. So yeah, this was something that I was hoping we could talk a little bit about. Just and we won't spend much time here, but just some ideas about what are you seeing in terms of how different levels of schooling are using 3D printing? What do you see happening in the earlier grade levels and the mid levels and the higher levels? So kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And most of my experience, I was an elementary school teacher, so I taught mainly K-6 when I was teaching, but have worked with middle schools and high schools as well. And as I've kind of gone through the different iterations of my career, I've worked with all different levels. And as we're looking at what schools are doing, and you think about kids using 3D printing, sometimes I'll talk to teachers and they'll be like, really, kindergartners? Yeah, kindergartners.
Oh yeah.
They can print. But when you think about breaking this down and scaffolding, right, and building up the skills that you're going to need, really with those K-5 students, and this is kind of what the slide shows, but for those of you that are just listening, for K-5, really what we're looking at is inspiring that curiosity in STEM, like just inspiring, like thinking outside of the box, right? That does, like, what is possible. It's really creating like tactile models, things that can help kids get a grasp on abstract concepts and making them, something that they can touch and hold and feel. It helps them really at that younger age start to understand the spatial reasoning, right? Like, you want them to understand the different ways that things go together. We do this now, but when you get into 3D printing and 3D modeling, it's that spatial sense is really important. And really what we're talking about, K-5, early engineering concepts. So we really are bringing that engineering way down into, the kindergarten grade level. And so the example that we have on the slide, at the Whitby School, they move their students through the design process by turning a fictional city into a scaled model city. I've seen different lessons where teachers have, had kids design functional tools that would be used by different members of their community. Let's say, what would a doctor use, and try to create different tools that doctor would use. But they're taking an abstract concept, creating, and then making that a model that they can see and hold. For grades 6 through 8, now we're talking about taking it to that next level, and they're really developing their design thinking skills, learning through iteration. They're starting to kind of imagine, do something, think about it, redesign it, redo it, really hands-on engineering principles. Now we're going to take some sort of maybe a car, and we're going to figure out, how do I change it? How do I make it better by maybe making the wheels different, or the how the motor works different, things like that. So we're going to deepen our lessons when I get to middle school. So for example, again, the wheel came from kind of the example that's on the slide, which is, taking 3D printed wheels to improve their CO2 powered cars, right?
Yeah.
So again, taking it to the next level.
You know what I always think of is how much fun it would have been. You remember those bridge building contests that we did when we were in school? How much fun that would be if you had 3D printers to be part of that. That could be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, or the soapbox cars. I mean, we're taking them to the next level, right? Like, this
exactly.
is all, it's not new, but it's definitely different, right?
Right.
We're changing it. And then now you take it to high school. And again, if the kids have started young enough, right, and they've learned these skills, now by the time they get to high school, we can really start to do some pretty complex design. And so, they're really starting to learn professional 3D printing skills as they get up to that, that high school level. We're developing their skills to go to college, career, really critical thinking skills. So for example, at the Brooklyn Technical High School, this is another example of kids that have done this over the years. They collaborated to demonstrate complex calculus principles with 3D printed parts. So they were actually taking their calculus principles and then figuring out, again, a way to make it hands-on and solid. But we've also got a ton of examples in high school robotics teams. They have to create, machines that do specific things, and they can,
enclosures for the electronics and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can't order this stuff. So where are you going to get it? Well, let's design it. Let's create it. So
excellent.
And so really when we look at kind of the ecosystem needs to support that flow, right? When you're with K-5, and this kind of goes into MakerBot, because I think we really think about the whole journey you're going to take from being a little person learning how to use it, all the way to that professional engineer sitting at their desk designing the next part that's going to go into the plane that's going to take us from here to China, right? Or wherever you want to go. K5, what we really want is we want to have something simple, easy to use. Teacher, take it out of the box. I don't want you to have to think about it. I want you to be able to use it very easily.
Right.
6, 8, same thing, simple. But as you start to get to the older grades, you're going to need something more complex. You're going to start thinking about heated chambers and different types of material, and there's just different things to kind of think through as you get older kids, more complex printing. So I think, and Jeremy, you work with teachers all over the place, but I think the thing that I run into the most is teachers saying, "Oh my gosh, this is like so scary. What am I going to do? How am I going to? I don't know anything about 3D printing." And you know what? You don't have to.
Right.
And you don't have to have something super complex. You can start simple. So I think that's the beauty of it.
Especially, I'll give you guys a little bit of a plug there from my own experience, because I do have to say that in that regard, MakerBot really, really shines. I've been testing these machines myself, and you literally take it out of the box, plug it in, and you get a wizard on the screen that will walk you step by step through what you need to do. It could not be easier. You really wouldn't have trouble getting started. Excellent. Okay.
So I think, again, where we're going with this, and for the audience, you have a lot of choices. And of course, you can go out there and you can look for the, cheapest thing, or you can look for, whatever is out there on the market. But with 3D printing, I think it is really important for you to have something that your kids can grow with, and also really helps you and your students really get engaged in the 3D printing process. Again, I don't care if I can teach you how to 3D print. That doesn't excite me. What excites me is that your kids are learning the process to be inventors. Yeah. So I think that's our goal at MakerBot is to release that inner engineer, that inner inventor, right? Yep. And really how we do that is through design thinking. And H.A. Giuliani, this is just one of my favorite quotes. If you've never heard it, for those of you that are on the podcast, design thinking provides a way to think about creative work. It starts with empathy, working to really understand the problems people are facing before attempting to come up with the ideas and create solutions. And nice. It's one of my favorites. Yeah. I wish I could take credit for it, but I cannot. But I think this, to me, is the underpinning of everything we should be doing, right? And that's where we want to start. So on the screen, we brought up kind of our design thinking process that we want people to do. And so, Jeremy, I think when we're talking to the audience right now, so I know your audience today, the people that show up, right? The people that are watching, they typically know 3D printing, but I bet all of you, I want you to think in your brain, if you're watching us right now, think in your brain of the teacher down the hall that doesn't know about 3D printing, or thinks this is going to be hard, or thinks, oh, well, I'm going to wait to get that printer, right? I mean, I'm sure, Jeremy, you think they all know somebody like that, right?
Probably.
So to those people that don't have a 3D printer, I think what's really cool about the design thinking process is right now, today, I want you to start thinking, as we're talking, about how you could do this in your classroom today, even if you don't have a printer. Because the first step is to empathize. It's to journal. It's to think about what things could better my environment. And last year during the pandemic, I think was one of the most interesting times. Trust me, we all think crazy time, but interesting because we had kids that were designing tools to open doors, tools to push button on elevators, thinking about empathy. How do I help other people? How do I help make this situation better? How do I make something to change the world? Right. And Jeremy, that's your the hand project. That's where this all started. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah, that's why I definitely recognize that that quote, and I don't know that we've used that one with the Enable volunteer community, but it absolutely is relevant there. This is what we've seen from all of the classrooms that have been involved with the Enable project with us is exactly this. It gives the students an opportunity to empathize with somebody else, to understand what would it be like to have a limb difference like that. And in fact, we've done workshops to actually have them put a sock over their hands and then try to do things and pick up cups and stack cups and things like that, so they can really try to get into their shoes and understand, and then start to think, well, what could we make that would, make things better for that person? So yeah, we've seen this, and it really is an exciting and rewarding experience for the students to go through. It's not just teaching them information.
Exactly. And I think that's what, if anybody walks out of this little conversation that we're having, and they can walk away and think, yeah, you know what? I can get my kids to do that. 3D printing is not just about the printer. 3D printing is about the process. It's about understanding, and this is what inventors do, right? If you talk to any entrepreneur, any inventor, they're constantly journaling, they're looking, they're thinking, what can I create, right? So get your kids starting there. Start to think. Then once they do that, defining that problem, understanding where are their problems, now brainstorm, how do I fix it? What can I do? Be crazy, again, these first 3 steps, you can do all of this without a printer.
Mm-hmm.
But once you start doing that, now we're going to get to prototyping. And that's really where things start to get fun. So when we start to prototype, that's when we're going to create low-tech versions. You still may be drawing.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully now at this point, you're going to start to transition your kids into Tinkercad, or maybe something easy, some basic design concepts. And from there, now we're going to start to create things. Then we can now we're going to start wondering, like, okay, now where's Jeremy? Where's 3D Universe? How do I get a printer? I need a printer now. But the cool thing is that now you're going to be ready to test. You're going to be ready to print. And so many teachers I see that here's what they do, Jeremy, that I see. Well, I can't 3D print because I don't have a 3D printer. There's not a 3D printer in our school. How am I going to 3D print? And then they get the 3D printer and they're like, well, I don't know how to use it yet. And my kids don't have anything designed yet. So I don't know what to do with it yet. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spend time with it sitting there because we're waiting for that next step. So you know what, if we could get every teacher out there thinking about these terms and getting their kids just excited about thinking, dreaming, designing without anything, and then get them into Tinkercad, when that printer shows up, you're going to have a whole list of things ready to print.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And it occurs to me that not only does it help them to be able to be productive ahead of actually getting the 3D printer, but it seems that these first 3 phases could actually end up helping to build the justification for the purchase of the 3D printer.
That's exactly right. You have to have it. Look, I've got all of it. Look at what I have. Look at what these kids are doing. Look at what they're designing. Wouldn't it be amazing to bring these things to life?
Exactly. I love it.
And there's nothing more invigorating than that small child looking at you with the love in their eyes saying, I really want to print this.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about training and certifications.
Absolutely. And again, this is where I think, again, as you guys are out there as an audience looking for, okay, well, how do I get started? Or tell teachers down the hall how to get started. I think, again, it's not just about buying a printer. People will ask me all the time, well, how much does a printer cost? A printer could cost $49. A printer could cost $5 million. What are you gonna do with it? What's your goal?
Right.
So when you think about what your needs are, and you think about a classroom use, most importantly, what support is going to be there for you with that printer? So the first thing we talked about was ease, right? It's easy to use. It's easy to open. Right. But the second thing is, how are you as a teacher going to learn how to use this? And B, how are my students going to use this? So again, we talked, there definitely is that thing, get started without the printer, but certification. That's one thing that we also include with all of our printers. So the printers come with certification. Now, certification, what does that mean? Now, a lot of people will tell you, well, we've got certification. So what you're going to find is you're going to open the box and it's going to say, here's the certification card. Press this button. This is how you turn it on. This is how you push these buttons. This is how you put the filament on the side or on the top or wherever you put it, right? It's going to be a how to print.
Right.
We want you to know how to print, but that's not the important part, right? So more than printer operation, when anybody out there that works with 3D Universe, when you're looking for a printer and you come to them for, advice and things like that, they're going to be making sure that you're learning more than just printer operation. We want to certify you as the teacher on how do I integrate this with my lessons? How do I make my lessons around real world problem solving? So we don't give you scripted lessons or things like that in the certification, but what we do is we give you a framework to start looking at your curriculum and how to embed this in your curriculum. Pretty exciting, right, Jeremy?
It is. It is. Yeah, and that's what
So,
we get a
yeah,
lot of that from teachers. That's probably the thing that we hear most often is sort of how, once we get this here, where do we go from there? How do we get going? How do we put this to good use?
right.
And I think that helps a lot with that.
And I think for us, really, we've got the ISD seal of alignment. Again, we did not get the ISD seal of alignment because of printer operation. We got it because of the tying of the technology to the underpinnings of the process. So it's really about making sure that students get that operation, design thinking, problem solving. Teachers, there's different certifications. There's a teacher certification and a student certification. So you can actually have some of your students get certified as well, so that they can actually help other students. And then we also have hundreds of curated lessons. So there are lesson plans, lessons that you can utilize. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. But, just again, as you're looking for a solution for you as an educator, I think these are all things that are important to consider. So it's not just a
Absolutely.
printer.
Absolutely. Okay, so then I guess now we're kind of moving into the territory where we start talking about giving students access to this 3D printing technology, and MakerBot CloudPrint is one important part of that. So maybe talk to us a little bit about what that is and why that's beneficial in an educational environment.
Absolutely. So, a lot of times, again, coming from coming from being an educator, right? 30 kids are in my classroom. People are like, "Oh my gosh, I've got 30 kids and you want me to have them all print to this thing. What am I going to do?" Typically, with a lot of 3D printers, what you'll do is you'll have a USB flash drive, you'll go plug that in, or some of them will connect to like your local internet and you can like send things to the printer. But then how are you going to manage that? I got 30 kids. You want 30 kids sending stuff to the printer? Oh, no, I'm a high school teacher. I don't have 30 kids. I have 180 kids, right? All the high school teachers out there are like, 30 kids. What's 30 kids? Yeah, that's right, high school teachers. I got your back. You've got 180 kids. How am I going to manage this? And so, again, thinking about how you teach and how students are going to be interacting is key for this to be successful. So, when we think about 3D printing in the classroom, how are your kids going to send stuff to the printer? How are you going to manage it? How do you know what stuff is going on? So, we actually came up with CloudPrint. And why is that? Because this is going to make your life so easy as a teacher. So what
and
you can
and
do, yeah, go
before we
ahead.
even get into the functionality, I just want to point out the benefits just in terms of some of the, I guess we call it IT management. Think about rolling out slicing software, a whole bunch of notebooks for all your students and managing that whenever updates come out. You don't have to do any of that with a cloud
Nope,
solution. All you do is go to
nothing.
a web address.
That's it. And the great thing is, so when you think about it, what teachers can do. So this actually has a little button. The teacher, all you have to do as a teacher, you click the button. It will give you a URL. So let's say I'm an elementary teacher, I might create one URL for my whale project and one URL for this project, and then all 30 kids would submit to that URL. I can take that URL. I just put it right into my Google Classroom.
Yeah.
We have some Google Classroom integration that works great, but you could put it into, if I'm a high school teacher, you could put it into Canvas or whatever your LMS is. All the kids have to do, they click on that button. there, the URL. It opens up one little box. The students just add they add their STL. They don't have to slice it, dice it. They don't have to know any of that. If they do, great, they can. And if slice it and dice it, that scares you, don't worry. It's not a big deal. All they got to do is take their little Tinkercad file, upload it, and then that's going to go into the queue. And as a teacher now, you'll notice well, if you're not on if you can't see the visual, I'll kind of explain it for you. But basically what it does is you'll have a queue. The students all go into the queue. I can see where everybody is. I can open up each individual project. If I want to put projects together, I can, but I can actually take it. I can look at it. I can make sure it's on the plate correctly. If it's not, I can actually reject it. I can send it back to the student so the student can actually get it back. They can then redesign, send it back to me. It gives us a way to collaborate on that print, which is great. And then once it's all ready, I can actually print. I can literally, if I'm sitting here now and Jeremy has a sketch in his office, I could send it to his office because it's all based on the cloud. So it's super great. It's going to show you what's printing. You can actually see it live printing. So you'll know there's actually a camera so that I can actually watch it print. So if there's a mistake or something that happens, I can actually catch that. But basically,
and I love how you have that group view. You can actually see all your printers, see all the cameras kind of side by side, and just kind of monitor your whole print farm. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I mean, really, when you think about it, I mean, and we had a lot of teachers doing this when we've had these crazy like half here, half there, kids on Tuesday and Thursdays and at home on Monday afternoons. Well, it didn't matter, so even next year, you're going to be back in the classroom. Great. But you know what? We're seeing a lot of districts that are now going to do some hybrid learning environments. But imagine, your kids don't have to be there. You don't have to be right there while the printer is printing.
And in fact, we're seeing that now where some schools, especially when you look at some of the more affordable solutions like the sketch bundle that we're going to talk about in a little while, they actually have the option now where they could send a 3D printer home with a student for a period of time and maybe rotate them around. And the wonderful thing about this is once you set up one of these printers for the cloud, you don't have to change anything. The printer goes somewhere else. As soon as you connect it to Wi-Fi or plug it into the network, it's back online. You can send jobs to it.
Exactly.
So it really makes for a nice solution.
Yeah, it's been huge. So that whole integration with Google Classroom, the links, it's a amazing solution. We've been super happy with it, and we've had great feedback from teachers. And I think about it, Jeremy, when I was in the classroom and we were just starting to roll out one-to-one. Okay, I just aged myself, but yeah, just starting to roll out one-to-one. And I remember just some of the simple problems like 30 kids lining up to go get a laptop, right? Like this is a way to deal with those same solutions, right? Like you can't have 30 kids going and standing at the 3D printer waiting to put their USB drive in. That would just
nor do you want them to. In many cases, you don't want a student to just walk up and start a print going. You probably want to check it first.
Exactly. For many reasons, because it may not even fit on the plate, right? I mean,
that's right. Yeah. Or, maybe they're using 100% infill and there's really no need to waste all that material.
Exactly.
Things like
exactly.
That. And, the other thing that I wasn't actually aware of this, but I'm seeing this on the slide that we're looking at here, that students can actually send their files and leverage MakerBot Cloud without having to create accounts for each student.
Correct.
So that's
There's
a nice
no
feature.
accounts. Yeah. No account creation. It's literally the teacher is creating, it's just a link
like
and it brings up
a
little box on their screen, and it's Chromebook. I mean, any browser. Nice. It's browser based. So you can just bring up that URL, you attach your STL, and off you go. Very simple.
Yeah, it's a very powerful feature. So we've talked a lot about the sort of the ecosystem and the kinds of support that you get and everything, but I do want to get into some of the products. So because this has changed a lot. If any of our customers are watching and haven't worked with MakerBot solutions in a few years, you're used to very different kinds of hardware. So there's entirely new series here, and I'd like to kind of talk through these, especially as they relate to the classroom. So talk us through this is not everything MakerBot offers, but for today's kind of focus, talk to us about the Sketch and then the Method series.
Absolutely. So when we look at our printer portfolio, and I do call it a printer portfolio, and like Jeremy said, there's a few others that are not there, but these are our newest printers. And we have the sketch, the method, and the method X. And so again, when we think about that scaffolding, and if we go back to the beginning of the conversation, when we said, okay, well, we're going to start with simple, and then we're going to go more complex. This is what you see in a printer portfolio. We've got sketch, which is simple, it's easy, it's plug and play. And you'll notice that there are two there. If you're not watching and you don't see it, you don't see this, but there's two, and we always show two. And the reason we always show two is that, you know, we have our Rep Plus as our older printer, which is tried and true. We sell a ton of them. People love them. They're great. But when we went to redesign, one of the things that we found, especially with teachers, you're not filling the build volume. You're not printing things that are this big for most kids, right? They're smaller prints, multiple prints. That's very hard to do when you're trying to get multiple things plated on the same build plate. So what we found is giving you more build volume for less money with multiple printers that now allow multiple kids to send prints. You actually can be more effective, more efficient, and more affordable with a sketch classroom, and the classroom pack comes with two. So we recommend that you actually get a couple of printers. So we've made it more affordable to buy multiple. The build volume for each is a little bit smaller, but when you look at the projects that you can print, Jeremy, you can get a ton of stuff done. And the other thing is, like, let's say I have one that fills up the build volume, but I have another one that's really tiny. Well, before I might take that little tiny project and all of a sudden I'm like wasting time with my printer. Now I can have this big thing that's taking 8 hours, but then I can print 4 or 5 small things maybe in the same time on the other printer.
Right.
We go to method. Method is going to open up some new things. This is more complex. We see a lot. We actually see middle schools starting to buy the method.
Oh yeah.
And the thing about method and method X is that they have so sketch is going to have a heated build plate. Method and method X are going to have a heated build chamber. So now kids are able to print number one with support material. So not just breakaway supports, but support material, dissolvable support material as well. With method, we do have a support material that can just be dissolved with water. With method X, we've got SR30, which wash tanks, some other things that you need to do that. But what's nice is that you can get very, very, the term we use is dimensionally accurate parts, which means I can print something over and over and over again, and it will fit together perfectly. It just, because of that heated chamber.
I will mention that I did a video on the Method X a while ago. It would be worth checking that out. I'll include a link to that video when we post this one. And I showed exactly that. We did some test prints to show dimensional accuracy and compared it against some other printers. So definitely check out that video if you want to learn more. And I'll also mention that we are going to be doing another session in 3D Universe Untethered a little bit later on in the weeks or months to come, where we'll be focusing more on this method line. But today we're gonna turn our attention back to sketch and kind of go into a little bit more detail here. So I think you already touched on some of this already. We're just looking at some of the details here of what's in the sketch bundle. So when you buy this bundle, let's kind of talk through what you get. You get 2 printers.
Yep.
You get the certification that we talked about. To get in this, what types of certifications are we talking about that are included here with the sketch bundle?
So you get 2 teacher certifications, and you get 2 teacher certifications, 10 student certifications.
Excellent. So you get both types of certifications, and then of course the MakerBot CloudPrint solution that we talked about. So all of that plus and multiple spools of material.
That's right. You get multiple spools of material too. Not infinite, but you do get 4 full rolls, and then you get 2 kind of starter rolls as well. So you get 6 spools of filament with the purchase.
And then we're not even showing this here, but access to all of the content that you have, including sample lesson plans and et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of educational resources available, and you're essentially getting all of that with this one bundle. So you get literally everything you need to get started with 3D printing in the classroom.
And it's actually, all of this costs less than 1 Rep Plus.
Yeah.
So people that have been buying Rep Plus for years and years and years, like a lot of them they just keep buying it because it works and it's a great machine. And we have people that buy them year after year after year. but I highly suggest you take a look at Sketch, what it offers. And again, you may get a rep plus or two, but this is gonna really ramp up what you can do in terms of production.
Yeah. And, again, it just goes back to, what we're trying to do here is giving access to this technology for the students. And you can definitely give more access, better access when you have two printers that you can kind of jump back and forth between and,
Right.
have one that's idle and maybe one that's in use. So it's a
Right.
very smart solution.
Yeah, and even if I'm a teacher and I'm ready to get started, and maybe my neighbor all of a sudden says, "Hey, I want to do this." Well, you've got a printer. Jeremy, like you said, maybe I could send it over to a different teacher, or I could move it here, move it there. And
That's right.
that's the other thing to kind of think about too. And I love maker spaces, and we help people with maker spaces all the time. And I think maker spaces are super important. But the other thing is, sometimes just having something like this in your environment, in your classroom,
Mm-hmm.
that's tiny and small, it's not going to take up a ton of room, but that the kids can actually see all day, every day. All of a sudden they notice that one of the tables, let's say it's a little bit wiggly, and they decide, well, you know what, I'm going to design something that goes underneath that leg, and I'm going to print it out, and we're just going to put it under there. Problem solved, right? So it gives them a chance to actually kind of, and for you teachers, who knows what they might create to fix problems in your classroom life.
Yeah. Absolutely. So then let's talk a little bit now beyond once coming back to kind of where we started. Once you bring a 3D printing solution into the classroom, the inevitable next question is going to be, now where do I go? How do I get started with this? And so talk us through some possibilities of how teachers might start off, some of the early things they might do, and maybe where we might go from there. We'll talk through several different types of ways that you could work with these technologies.
Absolutely. So we broke this down into a couple phases, which I think are kind of fun. And so phase one, it kind of goes with our design process. I call it discovery and exploration. That's the first thing you want to do, is just discover and explore. And for those of you in the audience, I'm assuming that most of you have been to Thingiverse, but if you have not been to Thingiverse, you need to just go to Thingiverse.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
We'll include that link too. But yes, Thingiverse.com. So many free objects for download, just anything you can think of. Just search for it, you'll find it, download it, print it. It's a great, fun way to get started.
It's a great way to get started. And sometimes it's just simple stuff. One example for myself is I had a big problem. And the
Oh, yeah.
problem was my hairbrushes would lay on my kitchen counter or my bathroom sink. And it drove me crazy because I kept looking for a brush holder, right? Like, I just want to
That's
hang
right.
it on I just want to hang the brush on the wall. Thingiverse. I went to Thingiverse. I found my brush holder, printed them out. Now my brushes, they hang on my wall. It's beautiful.
That's right. Yep.
So, again, discover and explore, because I think when you go out there, again, have a printer, don't have a printer. If you could spend it's 10 minutes a day, just go look. Have your kids go look. Literally make that an activity that's available for them. Let's say,
Mhm.
like, I used to have a time in my classroom, Jeremy, where let's say the students were done with their work, and I'd have a top 10 things you could do when you were done with your work. Think of, if I had Thingiverse now, I'd be like, Thingiverse, go to Thingiverse, find something that
Yeah.
you think would be
It's
great to make, right?
it's like recess for the internet age. It's wonderful.
It is. So if you're not aware of that and you don't have this in your bowl of tricks of things for students to do, great thing to do. So now
Yeah.
when you go out there, you're going to start with that discovery and exploration. Now, once they start to get that, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have them download things. They're going to then need to kind of be able to iterate, do things with that. So let's kind of move to, and again, there's a whole bunch that you can do anything there. But if we go to phase two, now that's going to be what I call solid modeling, right? This is very basic stuff, but in the bottom corner, and again, if you get a chance, or Jeremy, you could maybe type these into the comments. This would be using things like Autodesk, Onshape, Tinkercad, Rhinoceros, SolidWorks. There's a bunch of different programs out there that will do this. None of those people are paying; they're not paid advertising. Tinkercad's free, so
Yeah, and I'll just mention real quick to add to that, Tinkercad, great free tool for getting started, kind of beginner level, more limited in what you can do. Onshape is one that we're really loving more and more. Free licenses available for education, available on every platform, browser-based, available for iPads and iDevices with an Apple Pencil. Really cool option for education. So definitely check those out.
Yeah, I love Onshape too. I've
Yeah,
used that as well, and it's really strong. And they've got some good tutorials as well.
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Really good tutorials. So
And
Onshape.
going back to what you were saying, I just want to touch on what you said before about how much fun it can be to go and you find something that you need, a little doodad for around the house. You go search Thingiverse, you're going to find it. No doubt somebody else has created it and you can download it. But when you get to this phase, what you're going to start to realize is even if you could go download it from Thingiverse, it is so much more rewarding to design your own. So once you start to actually build your own model from the ground up, from scratch, and print it out, and then put it in your home to solve some problem or whatever it might be, that's really exciting to
It's
know that
really
you created
exciting.
this
It
from
is.
nothing. Yeah, it
It
is.
is. And so really with that solid modeling, you're going to start to get kids understanding solid shapes and dimensions,
Yep.
functional parts, how they fit together, building blocks. And this is the building blocks of what they're going to be doing in engineering, product design, and architecture
That's right.
anyway. So you'll kind of notice the building blocks that we have on the side there. Like we've got some simple buildings that you can make, but then you can get into things like propellers, and you've got the third part that's even more complex. Again, kind of going from simple to complex.
That's right.
But just that
And
solid modeling.
the wonderful thing about all these solid modeling tools is that when you learn one of them, you're going to have a very easy time transitioning to any of the others because all of the basic concepts are the same. So when you learn about creating sketch layers and then extruding and adding fillets and all the basic things that you do in CAD, you can go pick up any other tool. And as soon as you learn the keystrokes and the mouse controls, you'll be able to pick it up much more quickly. So it really is a helpful tool for students. Even if they may end up in a company where they're using a different tool, they'll be much more able to jump in and pick it up quickly.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So, they're going to get really good with these tools, the solid shapes, but then they're going to need to get even more complex. Again, think of scaffolding, right? Then we're going to get into phase 3, which we call kind of digital sculpting. So these are things that don't have straight lines. They're on the screen. If you're not able to see, we've got a hippopotamus and a rose, right? Or kids' favorite thing to print today, which is Baby Yoda,
Yes.
right? Like things that are not straight. And this is where it gets into art. So simulating physical sculpting, push and pulling like digital clay, high detailed models. And Jeremy, I talked to an artist at one point that he was actually a college professor and an artist, and they had started to do like a ton of sculpting in
Mhm.
VR and then printing it out.
Oh,
And
yes.
and it was really interesting to think about because when I talked to him, he was it was a fascinating. Sorry, I get lost in fascination because everybody that does this like really well, I just like I'm in awe of. It's almost like I'm a little like, I get a little bit, oh my gosh, they're a rock star. But what he said, and imagine this, if you're thinking, but like if you're just listening, think about this. So he was talking about having very, very small models that he was trying to do very minute detail on. Because he was like, now imagine it's in VR. I can blow that up so that
Right.
it's as big as my head. I can add minute detail, shrink that back down, send it to the printer, and print it with all of that detail. He's like,
Absolutely. And not only that, there's something so powerful about this. If you haven't played around with the VR tools that are available now with some of the virtual reality sculpting and art tools, it's really amazing to be able to paint or draw in 3 dimensions and spin it around and manipulate it in front of you. It's just a fascinating, much more immersive kind of an experience. And to then be able to take that creation, like you said, and send it straight to a 3D printer adds a whole new level to it. It's just very cool stuff how it's all coming together.
it does. And then once they're printed out, a lot of people are now taking them. Like I'll have people all the time say, "Oh, like can you do multicolor?" And this professor actually had told me, he's like, no, I don't want to print in multicolor because I want kids to paint. I want kids.
Right.
Again, this is not just about the technology, right? This is about actually doing things with it once it's a piece of art. And this technology is being used in film, animation, video games. If any of
That's
you
right.
have kids that want to design video games, do animatronics, toy
And
design.
especially, I mean, yeah, I mean, one of the tools you have listed here is ZBrush. I mean, if your students learn ZBrush and learn, for example, character modeling, you will not have too much difficulty finding a job in the entertainment industry, video games, movies, et cetera, because that's what they're all using. It's a
Absolutely.
very, very valuable skill set for sure.
So
So
yeah, so
maybe we
that's
could
kind of, we
maybe
could talk about it for hours, and it's not like these are the only phases, right? But I think just from a broad concept to give the audience kind of something to think about and aspire to, I think this gives you a good kind of jump start into what you're going to do through the process of getting more complex in your thinking about a 3D print.
Absolutely. So the important thing I think to take away is that there are absolutely available resources to help you get started very quickly, very easily, download all kinds of things ready to print. And then at your pace, as you and your students are ready, you can move into these other much more advanced options. So it's a great workflow. Maybe we
And
could
then
just give a couple of examples here.
just seamless plug too.
Yeah,
Thingiverse is MakerBots.
exactly. Yes.
Just
That
to
is a
make sure.
MakerBot resource. But it's
So
all free. Everything on
it's
Thingiverse is free to download. It's all open source designs, which is
all open
wonderful.
source site, and your kids can design and put things up there to share as well.
In
Um,
fact, there are some great collections on Thingiverse for education. They have some STEM oriented collections already where they have groups of recommended projects and even some lesson plans and things to go along with them. There's a lot to explore on there.
Absolutely. So yes, that is, if there's actually a whole Thingiverse education area. So when you go to Thingiverse, again, if you're just exploring for fun, just explore. But if you're really exploring for lesson plans or you want to kind of figure out how to fit it into curriculum, there is a Thingiverse education area, great lesson plans. Teachers have shared things, students have shared things. Definitely check it out. And then just kind of some, quick examples. What I have on the screen here is a water cycle project that was done by some fourth grade students. And so they had kind of printed out the different phases in the water cycle, and designed them in 3D printing software and then printed them out. This was actually inspired by the MakerBot Educator's Guidebook. And so we actually have our third version coming out. We actually released it about a month or so ago. And Jeremy, we can get you a link to that. So if
Terrific.
people want to reach out to you to get a digital copy before it goes to print, we can give them, your folks the ability to get that.
Wonderful.
So we'll make sure Jeremy has that, and you'll have to reach out to him and beg him for that copy. But it's
Be
great.
happy to share it. Just you folks know how to reach us, I believe, but send us an email at info@3duniverse.org.
Oh, he's
And we'll
gonna
be
make it
happy
so
to send
easy for
something.
you.
Right?
But yes, the MakerBot Educator's Guidebook is used by thousands of teachers. It is amazing. It will walk you through again how to print, and it will also walk you through how to create a lesson plan. It has some specific examples. Again, not that you have to stick with them, but I think it'll get your juices flowing so that you can kind of figure out how you want to do this with other students.
Nice. Nice. And then we have one more here. What's this one about?
And this is the Falcon Robotics team, Carl Hayden Community High School, grades 8 through 12. Of course, it was a robotics team, applying physics, math, creating complex robotic devices. They were using digital fabrication tools. If you can't see the slide, it actually has their 3D design, which is very complex on the screen. And they were actually printing different parts to go on this robot. They brainstormed, they figured out what models they were going to do, they made changes, they evaluated those, they repeated it, they put them back on the robot. Again, this is stuff that as you're designing, you can't just go down to Ace Hardware and find the part that's going to do exactly what you need. So how are
That's
you
right.
going to get that part? You know,
And
and
I haven't been part of one of these robotics teams, but I can't help but think, I know they have competitions. I can't help but think that, especially as they're coming up on a competition, the ability to iterate rapidly will really start to become useful.
exactly. And the other thing, Jeremy, as they are doing things like, sometimes they have to go underwater or do very tough things.
Yeah,
A lot of times, and again, for those of you that aren't very familiar, like typically when you start, you're going to print with PLA, just a basic
right.
plastic. Make it easy. I'm going to use easy language.
Mhm.
But as you need to get into these more complex parts, you may need to use a carbon fiber, or you may need to use an ABS. You're going to need to use a different type of material, a PETG. And again, don't let that scare you. But as you start to need different materials, and that's where Jeremy's going to have my best buddy Ryan come on, who's the engineer. I'm the teacher, he's the engineer. We make a great pair. He can explain all of the properties of all those. But what I can say is that when you need to do certain projects that require those, you're going to be able to move up into those projects as you start to include the other printers. So again,
Mhm.
it's not just about buying the printer, because a lot of times people think, well, I'm just going to buy a printer. That's fine, but then how are you going to grow that through your grades?
That's right.
And that's
And
the piece that, I want people to make
that's
sure they think
important. Yeah, you have to think about it at an organizational level, because there are definite advantages to having a common solution distributed throughout, a school, throughout your maker spaces, et cetera. It's so much easier to manage. It's easier to handle updates, to handle training, just everything that goes along with it, ordering spare parts, ordering materials. It's just there's so many advantages to keeping things consistent. And what I like about this system is, there's, like you said, maybe you're starting off with a couple of sketch bundles, but you get to learn the MakerBot, slicing platform, the CloudPrint. You get familiar with the whole ecosystem. If later on you have needs to get into the more advanced method solutions, CloudPrint isn't changing. You're using the exact same slicing platform. You're using the same kinds of materials and workflows. So it's a very easy way to keep things efficient and easy to work with.
Yeah, so real people, real schools, real teachers, real students, and real people in industry. So, it's an exciting time to talk about 3D printing and think about 3D printing and
Yeah,
how we
it
can
is.
really, impact the STEM curriculum that you have, and
It is.
integrate with everything. So again, robotics, sometimes people think, okay, well, we're going to do robotics. Again, you want 3D printing along with that so that you can
Right.
create the other things.
Right. And maybe just as we're wrapping up here, I'd like to touch on the support side of things, because, you know, not only are you, looking at the machine that you're purchasing and the sorts of resources that you'll have to get started, but, at some point you may need help. You might need somebody to work with you. And so it's worth mentioning that part of the solution you're getting here is the 3D Universe team and the MakerBot team to work with you. So we can consult with you. We can help you to come up with the right solution and help you to figure out the components and how to get those deployed and how to get up to speed and get things, working well in your classrooms. And we have people at MakerBot that can work with you. They have an excellent support team, very responsive, US-based support. These things are important also as you think about 3D printing, purchases. Do you want to get a machine where you're going to be dealing with somebody that's, in a time zone 14 hours, different every time you need support?
Right.
These things will impact your experience.
Yep. Our support is in Brooklyn, New York,
Yeah.
which is where our headquarters are. And the other thing, Jeremy, I think it's a great thing that we do talk about this, because we do have a 1 year warranty on the machines that you
Hmm.
get, but we also do have and it's a warranty, just your standard, it, covering basic,
Hardware warranty. Yep.
hardware only, all that kind of stuff. But we'd also have extended warranties and what we call maker care, and maker
Right.
care adds additional support levels for you. It can, depending on what you get, we've got things that include like hot swaps for teachers. That's a
Hmm.
big deal. Be able to just
It
say,
is.
here, send it in. I'll, send me a new one. I'll send you this one back.
That's right.
Those kinds
And
of things.
we should mention that MakerBot just added an option for a 3-year extended warranty
Did.
on the sketch bundle, which a lot of schools will want. A lot of schools really want to have that 3-year coverage. So that is an option now.
Right. I mean, and to have that for 3 years, to be able to call up MakerBot at any time and say, "Hey, I'm having a trouble with the extruder," or whatever it is. I mean, it's technology. We all admit that sometimes there's an issue with technology, and being able to just know that you've got that support behind you. And
Sure.
Jeremy, I think that is a really good point, because there have been a lot, and you can speak to this better than I can because you know more 3D printer companies, but there are 3D printer companies that have come and they have gone. And there's
Sure.
nothing worse than getting 100 3D printers in your district and then all of a sudden they're gone. And the
That's
fact
right.
that, for most people, I don't know if they know, but MakerBot is, we are owned by Stratasys, which is one of the largest 3D printer companies in the world. We're not going anywhere. We're here. We're here to stay.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think most people know the history there. I mean, MakerBot really started this whole thing, in the desktop 3D printing. So they've been there from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Well,
And
I know I've
we're
learned
excited
a
to be
lot.
partnered with 3D Universe. So this is
Yes.
great.
So I hope our audience learned as much as I did. There's really I think a lot of value there in the educational solutions that you guys offer, and we certainly have a lot of educational customers. So I know this will be valuable information.
But I think you're offering a promotion on Sketch 2 right now.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. So we do have a special promotion running through the end of June. If not sure when you'll be watching this video, but for June of 2021, there is a promotion going on right now where you can get a special 5% discount on your entire Sketch order. So if you order your Sketch bundle, maybe one of these extended warranties we talked about, extra materials, everything on the order, MakerBot, 5% off. Plus you get a free additional free spools of the tough material, which is a great material to start printing with. Very easy to work with, but stronger than normal PLA. Let's see. Did I miss anything? I think
I think so. I think
that's
that's
the
it. But
cover.
I want
Yeah,
to make sure your audience knew that. So I'm
it's a
sure
great
Jeremy will have
opportunity.
the details for you. But yes, it's a great deal.
We
And
will. And
it's
those,
the
the deals are
entire.
always they're always changing. So if you're watching this video at a later time, reach out to us. We'll see what's going on currently. But we're always happy to, put together custom quotes, as you know. So just reach out to us, info@3duniverse.org, as always, or call us. We're always happy to have discussions with you and help get you what you need. But this has really been a great discussion, Dottie. I appreciate you joining me and taking the time and being with us today.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you too, and talk about what I love to do and what I'm passionate about, and hopefully we can get other people that are just as passionate. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate what you do for us.
Of course. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And for those watching, please email if you have any questions. We'd love to work with you. As always, you can check back at our blog, 3duniverse.org. Check the graphic in the upper left for 3D Universe Untethered to find all of our recordings and other upcoming episodes. Hope to see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye.
Jeremy.